Hi, my name is Reverend Donna, and I'm with our Sacred Journeys, and I wanted to share a Christmas message with all of us this year. I'd like to start with prayer, turning within, dropping down into my heart space, the place where the divine dwells deep within. I recognize and give thanks for this time together. I give thanks for this opportunity to share a message that I feel is being called forth from within me. I recognize and know that there is only God. I recognize and know that there is a peace that passes all understanding, that it is wisdom, it is love, it is joy, it is beauty, that I am one in this truth, and I know this is the truth of all of us. That as I recognize and know as I go into this time together, I do so recognizing that the presence of Spirit is guiding and directing this time together right here and right now. I call this time good and very good. It is blessed, and so it is. The Christmas message for me is about light, especially in 2020, where we've had so much going on in our world that might have uh, caused us to feel possibly as a sense of separation from one another because we can't get together as often, or we're doing things virtually by Zoom or FaceTime or Skype or some other social media platform. While I'm grateful for these avenues of connection, my heart misses the heart-to-heart connection, the in present moment physical contact moment where I can give someone a hug or hold their hand or um, tap their shoulder or any one of those ways to have that physical connection, that heart-to-heart connection. And I recognize and know that in this time of year especially, we talk about light. Many of our faith traditions talk about light. Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, winter solstice. And I'm sure there's even more that I'm not aware of a variety of faith traditions that are celebrating the light right now. Just like the winter solstice was about giving thanks to the moon energy and giving thanks for the rebirth of the sun, of the light returning, Christmas is about that Christ light. It's about the Christ that is within us. It's that Christ consciousness. It's the love, the peace, the joy. It's that deep energy of love that Christ came to teach. And that I recognize and know that as we celebrate the birth of the Christ, we're recognizing that it's in this moment now, that it's constantly, continually unfolding from within us. When we come from that place of the Christ, we're feeling and sensing those teachings that he taught to love one another. He taught us to trust, to pray, to have faith. He taught us to believe. He taught us to utilize the power of our words. He taught us how to live in alignment with that Christ light. And if we can find that within us to express and experience this light from that place of connection from within us, that divine seed that I know is present always within, through, and as us, that is when we are taking it in this present moment and stepping out into our world, illuminated in that light. When we come from that place of love and recognizing that in one another, we're celebrating the Christ. We have that opportunity for human empowerment to embody that truth of who we are. There are many other symbols of the holiday season of Christmas that we think of in addition to the Christ. Uh, and I'm going to share a story. It's called Teach the Children, and it was adapted by my mentor minister, Reverend Paula Swavely. And I really like how it teaches about some of the symbols that we utilize at Christmas and how we can utilize them in our everyday life, not just at Christmas, but throughout our entire year. And it goes like this. Just a week before Christmas, I had a visitor, and this is how it happened. I had just finished the household chores for the night and was preparing to go to bed When I heard a noise in the front of the house, I opened the door to the front room, and to my surprise, Santa himself stepped out from behind the Christmas tree. He placed his finger over his mouth so I would not cry out. "What are you doing?" I started to ask. The words choked up in my throat, and I saw he had tears in his eyes. His usual jolly manner was gone. Gone was the eager, boisterous soul that we all know. He answered me with a simple statement: "Teach the children." I was puzzled. What did he mean? He anticipated my question, and with one quick movement brought forth a miniature toy bag from behind a tree. As I stood bewildered, Santa said, "Teach the children. Teach them the old meaning of Christmas, the meaning that nowadays Christmas has forgotten." Santa then reached in his bag and pulled out a fir tree and placed it before the mantel. "Teach the children that the pure green color of the stately fir tree remains green all year round, depicting the everlasting hope of humankind. All the needles point heavenward, making it a symbol of our thoughts turning upward to the highest idea." He again reached into his bag and pulled out a brilliant star. "Teach the children that the star was the heavenly sign of promises long ago. God promised us everlasting love for all the world, and the star was the sign of fulfillment of that promise." He then reached into his bag and pulled out a candle. "Teach the children that the candle symbolizes that the Christ light burning brightly in the center of each and every one of us when we remember who we truly are, children of the Most High. When we see candlelight, let it remind us that love displaces sadness and hurt. When we remember to let our love light shine for all the world to see." Once again, he reached into his bag and removed a wreath and placed it on the tree. "Teach the children that the wreath symbolizes the real nature of love. Real love never ceases. Love is one continuous round of affection without beginning or end, everlasting." He then pulled from his bag an ornament of himself. "Teach the children that I, Santa Claus, symbolize the generosity and goodwill we feel whenever the spirit of giving fills our hearts and minds enough to share joy and love with one another." He then brought out a holly leaf. "Teach the children that the holly plant represents eternal life, for holly lives forever, as does the soul of each of us." Next, he pulled out from his bag a gift and said, "Teach the children that God so loved the world that God gave the gift of life as you and me. We are God's gifts to the world and to one another." Thanks be to God for this magnificent gift. Teach the children that the wise men bowed before the holy babe and presented him with gold, frankincense, and myrrh. We should always give gifts in the same spirit of the wise men, giving only our most precious gifts of love, compassion, and acceptance. Santa then reached in his bag and pulled out a candy cane and hung it on the tree. "Teach the children that the candy cane represents the shepherd's crook. The crook on the staff helps to bring back strayed sheep to the flock. The candy cane is the symbol that we are to take care of one another. When one of us loses our way, love and kindness will show the way." He reached in again and pulled out an angel. "Teach the children that it was the angels that heralded the glorious news of the birth of the Christ. The Christmas story tells of the birth of the Christ of Jesus, the birth of love and light as the center of his life, the birth of true wisdom through loving God. We now celebrate the birth of Christ in each of us as love and light, the hope of peace. The angels sang glory to God in the highest, on earth peace and goodwill toward everyone." Suddenly I heard a soft twinkling sound, and from his bag he pulled out a bell. Teach the children that as the local sheep are found, as the lost sheep are found by the sound of the bell, it should ring us to the fold. The bell symbolizes guidance and our return to love of God, ourselves, and one another. Santa looked back and was pleased. He looked back at me, and I saw that the twinkle was back in his eyes. He said, "Remember, teach the children the true meaning of Christmas, and do not put me in the center, for I am but a humble servant of the one who sent me. And I bow down my love of God with all my heart and all my soul. Santa Claus is the spirit of giving, the spirit of Christmas, come to fill all our hearts with love and joy through sharing. Merry Christmas." And I love this story because it's a metaphysical interpretation of Christmas and all that symbolizes this sacred time. Christmas is a sacred time. It's a time of remembrance. It's a time of celebration. It's a time of sharing our precious gifts with one another. And for me, that precious gift is time. There's an opportunity for us to recognize and know that there's a light that shines brightly from within all of us, that is that gift of who we are. It's that Christ light. Are we choosing to tap into it? Are we choosing to listen to that infinite wisdom? Are we choosing to honor the truth of who we are? I heard a story tonight. Um, I was talking with a few people, and they shared a story about losing something and then finding it, and guidance. And I think sometimes when we are thinking about light and love and peace and everything that's been going on in our world right now, that we forget to listen. We get wrapped up in our anxieties, or we get wrapped up in the busyness of the time. Christmas is a time of hustle and bustle. In past, maybe not so much this year, but we're out shopping, we are buying, we are cooking, we are doing all kinds of activities, when in the time of winter, it's a time of slowing down and having an opportunity to reflect and listen. And I truly believe that Christ taught us to listen. The birth of the Christ within us gives us the opportunity to listen to that infinite wisdom that's within. And the story that was shared with me tonight was about a man who had 5 children, and he lived on a farm. And he was out in his barn, and he was working on a project, and he had a watch. He had a beloved watch that he didn't realize slipped off his wrist while he was working. And he couldn't find it. He looked everywhere. He couldn't find it. And he decided to ask his children for help. So he went in, he called all of his children together. Like I said, there were 5. And he said, "I lost my precious watch out in the barn. I'm asking all of you to go and take a look and see if you can find it. And the one who finds it, I will give you an additional allowance this week." So all of the kids go out. Of course, they want that extra allowance. So they are searching and searching and searching, and they're spending forever out there, and they can't find it. And finally, they come in and they tell their dad, "We can't find it. We've looked everywhere. It must have just disappeared." And his 5-year-old says, "Is it okay, Dad, if I go out and take a look one last time?" And his father says, "Sure, go ahead." So he goes outside, and in a few minutes later, his son comes back in with the watch. And his father said, and his brother said, how did you find it?" And he said, "All the hustle and bustle was gone when I went out to the barn by myself. I just stood there and listened. I got quiet and I listened, and I could hear the ticking of the watch. And that's how I found it." So I wonder if we can be still enough to hear the ticking of the watch, if we can be still enough to hear what it is that is calling itself forth from within us, We have an opportunity to connect with Spirit. We have an opportunity to love one another in compassion and acceptance. I'm going to end with a story, with actually a Christmas letter written by Ernest Holmes, who's our founder of Religious Science, Centers for Spiritual Living. And it says, "A Christmas letter from Ernest Holmes." This was his understanding of Christmas, so I wanted to incorporate that into my talk tonight. Christmas is for remembrance. The love manifested through our gifts to each other typifies the offer of life and the givingness of spirit to its creations. The hands of the eternal are outstretched throughout our hands, and the heart of the infinite beats in the human breast. But the giver must give of himself, for the gift without the giver is bare. It is not then in lavish gifts that we find true giving, but in the sweet simplicity of remembrance, in the kindly thought, the tolerant mind, and the gentle act. Love alone can give love. Sympathy alone can sympathize, and only goodness can really do or be good. The one who gives for reward does not give at all. He seeks to bargain, to trade for spiritual gifts. Hence, he senses a loss in his own giving and finds no completion through the act. But he who gives half his meat to the hungry feels justified and is warmed by a real sense of comradeship. He has established an actual unity between himself and other offspring of creation. Great causes succeed when there is a giving of humanity to humanity. With the check must come the one who wrote it, his interest, his enthusiasm, and his love. The check must be a symbol of his desire to impart of himself. Then shall it multiply its benefits and do good. Charity is cold, but love is warm. When heart speaks to heart, a divine conversation has taken place, a heavenly discourse. Each of us has something to give. Let each see that he gives of his best. If we are bringing our gifts to the altar of love, nothing less than the best will be acceptable. Nothing less than all is enough. May the real spirit of Christmas, the giving of the self to life, enter and abide in you now and through all times. Sincerely, Ernest Holmes. So I'm going to close in prayer and just give thanks for this time together. For I recognize and know that the giver and the receiver are one. That I recognize and know that there's a higher idea unfolding. That I recognize and know there's the divine having its way through each and every one of us. There is love, compassion, peace, acceptance, light. These are the gifts of Christmas and more. May we come together in love. May we feel the love at a heart level and that heart-to-heart connection. May we go out into our day loving one another. Whether we're smiling through our masks from afar, smiling through Zoom, or smiling in our own room alone listening to the ticking of the watch, we recognize and know that God is in the midst of each and every one of our experience, because God is in the midst of each and every one of us. As I celebrate this truth, as I honor it, as I give thanks for the Christ light within me, for the opportunity of the birth of the Christ within me today, to step into what is next for each one of us, for myself, and for each and every one of us, I know it is God's grace that is guiding. I give thanks for recognizing the gift of love, the gift of presence, the gift of time. And as I release my word into the law, I already know it is done. I let it be, and so it is. Namaste. I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful holiday season, celebrating Christmas and the light within all of us, the return of the light. And I know without a doubt that we are all blessed. Namaste.